What's going on, my broskies? My name is Toadski, back again here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today we're here with the breakdown, the accessible team video for the upcoming treasure map versus Momonosuke. Now, I must say, this is probably one of the most difficult treasure maps that have ever come out, because the way that they've kind of structured this treasure map is that they have kind of assumed that most of the player base would have spent their gems on the anniversary to secure some of these characters. And essentially, if you're the type of player that either A, didn't pull on this Sugo Fest or any of the Sugo Fests, or B, got very unlucky and didn't pull a lot of the new characters, and this treasure map is going to be relatively difficult for you. So this video hopefully will aim to give you guys some different team compositions in order to take on all of these brand new boss fights. So without further ado, we will get into it, and if you guys want to see the breakdown of Momonosuke, I believe we broke him down in a past video. I know I've definitely talked about him before. He's not that great in my personal opinion, but the artwork looks great and he does have ink effect, so keep that in mind. So moving on to the first boss fight is the Battle Rush versus Chopper, who is a Psy boss, so you predominantly want int characters, and all characters receive cooldown for this fight, so there's no real restriction in terms of what you can bring. But the recommended units are very good here, because the recommended units are not super useful in a lot of the other Battle Rush fights. So we have Capone as the captain here, and that's the key thing, is to use him as the captain, because as a captain, you will completely avoid the fact that crewmates are binded, so it means your captains are unbinded, so you can use the special of Capone himself, which gives you a full board of slots, removes paralysis, removes bind, and gives you the attack orb boost effect for shooters and free and not free spirit, shooters and driven. So if you run predominantly shooters and driven with Capone as the captain, it's going to help you a lot. There is also a chain reduction, so Big Mom's on the crew to give us a chain lock, and then there's also going to be 6 turns of threshold, which Bato and Cavendish can also remove. So overall, it's actually a pretty easy team. With Capone, you've got Bato, Cavendish, and then Big Mom for your chain lock. I don't know 100% if Bato and Cavendish remove 6 turns of threshold at level limit break, if they're not at level limit break 5. If that is the case, you just run an additional unit that gets around threshold, because the Kaido and the Buggy on this team literally only here because they're int driven units that will work with the squad. So those are completely replaceable. Next, we have the Battle Rush versus Ulti, and this is actually a pretty annoying fight. So you got cooldown for Psy, Quick, and Dex characters. Now for this fight, it's very strange. It says, for the first 2 turns, the crew can only deal 50% of Ulti's HP. So what this is a damage limiter effect. Now what I would suggest is, if you have the ability to do so, is for one of your captains, if you're able to switch it out for Legend Frankie, which is 6+ Frankie, which is this one right here. If you have one of your captains to be this Frankie, and you can use his captain action to become General Frankie, that will actually completely bypass the damage limiter altogether. So that is probably something that I would advise you guys to do. Remember though, if you do opt to do that, every character on your crew must either be a fighter, shooter, slasher, or a striker, so you need to build around that. So as long as one of each of your characters on your crew have one of those classes, you can use Frankie as the friend captain, or alternatively, have Frankie as your captain, and then use the friend captain of this Monkey D. Luffy. And it really helps to just use the recommended units here, because they just straight up deal with everything. One thing to note though is the character of Brook right here, and also the Zoro on the team. Both of those characters are level limit break 5. You can farm them on Extra Island right now. You can farm up the Robin, the Brook, the Sanji, and the Zoro, and having them at level limit break 5 is going to be so useful, especially if you're the type of player that doesn't pull a lot, and you want to build these more quote-unquote accessible teams. Make sure to max those characters out. Luffy on this team is completely maxed too, but it is not ultimately required. Having his special though, being able to reduce your character's cooldowns, because your crewmates will be special reversed. Luffy as the captain avoids it, and then his special does do special reduction, and then it also gives you the attack boost. Zoro gives you the orb boost. Jinbei gets around the ship bind and also gives you matching slots, which is fantastic. And the resilience effect is removed by Brook, and then the combination of Frankie and Zoro on this team as the crewmates to get around the defense up. Frankie also gives color affinity. So as long as you have one of the legend Frankies as one of the captains, just to ignore the damage limiter, it's nice. You don't ultimately need it. You can just take 2 turns if you want, but by having Frankie, it makes the team a little bit faster. Now we move on to the third Battle Rush fight, which is versus Jack, where he is a strength boss, so you predominantly want quick units. And this is a really strange fight. So strength X quick all receive cooldown, but you see on Battle 3 that there is an interrupt where anytime you remove bind, he's going to inflict 5 turns of bind to the crewmates once again, and he also does it in his preemptive attack. Now they do recommend the new Pirate King Adventures Roger to be used here. Now in my opinion, what will happen here is once you remove bind, he inflicts bind again. So then you have to use Roger's special again to remove bind, and I assume it is an interrupt that will only occur once, because when you defeat Jack, he will revive with 1.6 million HP, and he inflicts bind again to the crewmates. And remember, with Roger and the way that he's built, you can use his special 3 times basically in a turn if you want. So the first one to activate the interrupt, the second one to actually remove the bind, and then the third time would be to remove the bind on the revive. So that's my assumption in terms of how that will actually go down. There's also 6 turns of attack down. We're using level limit break 5 Cat Dog to remove that. If you don't have them at level limit break 5, you still use them because they still remove it by 5 turns, and then you could have some type of support or another unit on the team to remove attack down. The Leonora and Ganryu, as well as the Hyogoro, are not required. They're just here because they are quick units that work with the team, so you don't need them. Shanks' crew gives us a chain lock. There is burn that's going to be inflicted to the crew, but ultimately we can just ignore that as long as we don't hit perfects, and I believe with the damage that we will do with this team, it should be okay. And now we get to Marco, which in my opinion is probably one of the toughest Battle Rush bosses that we've had. So Marco is a side boss, and he gives cooldown to Driven, Powerhouse, and Cerebral. This team composition is using Friend Captain Queen in mind in order to get it completed. So keep that in mind if you do opt to use a similar team. So we're using Doflamingo as the captain because he does resist Special Bind, which is kind of nice to have. We also have Hiyori, but Hiyori can also be switched out for other characters that do similar things. And what I mean by that is that there are characters such as Legend Shirahoshi here on the third bottom row there, as well as the Halloween Shirahoshi. These characters are all unique in the fact that they have these crewmate abilities that set all of your slots to a certain effect at the start of the fight. That thing is really cool because it means that you don't really have to worry about, orb manipulation mechanics, because you know that when you get to the final stage on Battle 3, that if you activate any type of orb changing mechanic, then all of your beneficial effects will be removed and your captain is blown away. So you obviously don't want that to happen. So realistically, if you're able to secure the full board of slots, it does make things a lot easier for sure. Now you do see that there's like a mini boss on Battle 2, and then there's a boss on Battle 3. So there's going to be 5 turns of attack down, and then 8 turns of despair, which goes down to 5 turns of despair. Sasaki deals with both of those things, as well as giving you color affinity boost. There's also Rainbow Shield, and there's also a combo hit barrier, but realistically, we're going to be using Queen as the friend captain, and Queen's captain action will go through the barrier and the Rainbow Shield, so we don't really have to worry about that, and that should be able to clear that fight without too many issues. And then of course, when you reach the final stage, you have a lot of other effects occurring here. You've got full board of block slots, of course, so realistically, now that I'm thinking about it, we probably want some type of ability to lock the slot of Queen. So realistically, we could potentially put a support that locks our slots. That would actually be really good. If we're able to secure that, just so Queen keeps the Wano slot for the final stage, that would be fantastic. There's also Special Bind, which we can resist. There is Paralysis for the top row, and you don't have to worry about that, remember, because Queen, with his Vanish Captain action, will resist the paralysis, which is great. There's also 6 turns of Threshold, 3 turns of Resilience, and 1 turn of massive increased defense. So once again, Queen with his captain action will get around the Threshold, gets around the paralysis, gets around the increased defense, and then Queen's special will deal with the resilience, as well as giving you a huge color affinity boost. We have the Kaido from the Blitz battle here. That special will give us a massive attack and orb boosting effect, which will allow Queen to do a lot of damage, and that's the focus of this team, is to have Queen as the friend captain and allow his mechanics to kind of just destroy this boss. Now we can talk about the final boss versus Queen. So this team composition is utilizing the Rush Sugo Special Sanji as our friend captain in this quest, so keep it in mind. cooldown here for Fighter, Free Spirit, and Cerebral, and you have the Stage 2 mini-boss. So there's a lot of things that goes on here. One of the big things is the fact that your top and bottom row are inflicted with 9 turns of bind, with sockets goes down to 6, obviously. Now, there's also special reverse, and this is where Yamato's really good, because Yamato resists special reverse, she also has a cooldown reduction special, and removes 3 turns of bind. So that will make it go down to 3 turns of bind remaining, and then the Eneru special removes the additional 3 turns of bind, and the Eneru special will also remove 5 turns of damage threshold. So actually, those 2 units deal with so much here. There's also poison slots in the middle row, and you're inflicted with poison, so that's why we have the Shiryu support on Mako, removes the poison, changes the slots in the middle row back into matching slots for the crew. So those 3 components deal with all of the gimmicks on this stage. And then we do have Sai Sanji's the captain. I'm not really 100% sure on which captain I wanted to use for this team in particular. This is not a bad option because you can use the special of this unit to give you a multi-turn orb boost, which is good for stage 2, and you can carry it into stage 3 as well. Now, when you actually reach stage 3, there's going to be an interrupt if you use an attack boosting effect, so you do have to be very cautious about that. You get a full board of block slots and a chain, chain attack down, 3.75 or less, which is pretty hefty. There's going to be a lot of despair, 8 turns of that, 7 turn defense. But the thing is here is that with Sanji's the friend captain, Sanji changes block into recovery. His chain boundary effect and then his potentially rush Sugo special gives you a lot of damage there, but also the despair we can remove with this Robin. Remember that this Robin is a farmable character. You can get her to level limit break 5 right now, and she's very, very much worth it because her special is so good after you get it to level 5, removing the despair by 5 turns. Also has the ability to change those block slots, but unfortunately the conditional boost cannot be activated here from Robin because the enemy does have full immunity, which is a bit of a shame. Now, the enemy does fully revive to 30% HP, and then also does 150,000 damage when he is defeated. This is why Mako is on the team in the first place, because Mako's special will give us an 80% damage reduction, so it just gives us a bit of leeway, allowing us to tank that hit. So I'm not 100% sure if this is the best team out there, but look, we're trying to build accessible, and this is a team that should be able to get the job done. And then we move on to the final team, which is going to be versus the Twin Dragons. So this team, you know, obviously I could sit here and explain exactly what's going on, but you guys, I will leave the gimmicks of this boss fight on the side of the screen. What we can do now is on Extra Island, there is currently an island where we can farm or actually test out teams against the Intrusion boss. So this team with the Sanji friend captain is what I will be using to test out this brand new piece of content. So that is pretty much going to wrap it up from me. I will leave you guys with this team clearing the test Intrusion Island. And yeah, even though some of the characters on this team aren't actually receiving the maximum cooldown here exactly, this team should still be able to apply what we are aiming to do in order to get the job done, in order to take down Momo and Kaido. But obviously, you know, we're trying to build accessible without using any of the anniversary characters. Obviously, if you have some of the anniversary characters, it will make some of these fights a lot easier for you. But of course, if you are unable to secure these units, then, you know, this is kind of what you have to go with, honestly. So it is what it is. But I'll leave you guys with the rest of this clip, and I will see you guys within the next video.
だったらこれ以上はなしだ。